Chapter 9. Shay Cody Shay.
Cody, close that goddamn door. You're letting out all my heat. Hurry up!
It was 7 p.m. on a school night. A young man of 15 was just getting off of work and back to his group home. He lived in the South Bronx in an old beat-down house with 10 other boys. Their city-appointed guardian was a fat, nasty, rude mistake of a man named Scrud Spinoza. Cody slammed the door shut behind him. He had been at work all day, from the crack of dawn to sunset. He sold newspapers from a deli stand downtown and was also a performer on the trains. On his way uptown and downtown, he would meet up with a small crew and break dance in the train cars. He was really good, and it was a good way to make a little extra cash. All he knew how to do was hustle.
Hey, yo, slam my door again, and
Oh, you're what, fatty? Huh? What?
Cody spat back at him. He didn't hate anyone but Spinoza. He was the scum of the earth. Spinoza was sitting at the kitchen table smoking a cigar. Cody was kind, but he didn't take nothing from anybody, least of all Scrud. Normally, the fat fart doesn't bother him, but for some reason today, he guessed he was bored or something. Cody stood there, waiting for a response, giving him the death stare. Cody had never been violent, but he was an intimidating boy. He stood almost 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and heavy hands. He had features like a cat, a broad nose, slanted eyes that were perfect for a good glare. He always wore his favorite blue jeans and tiger t-shirt to match the black fitted hat he always wore, backward, to hide the mesh of brown curly hair on his head. He raised his hand to his ear and gestured, waiting for Spinoza to respond, but he just kept puffing his cigar, with a devilish look on his face.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Keep collecting your freaking checks and leave me alone,
Cody said, marching past him towards his bedroom.
yeah, I'm getting that check, all right. And the day they stop is the day your behind is back on the street with the rest of the trash. You'll be right back on the street just like your whore mother.
Cody got to his room and slammed the door shut behind him. He wasn't dumb enough to be baited by that idiot. He had way too much to look forward to than to throw it all away by bashing his face in and being sent to jail. He took a deep breath and plopped down on his bed. His roommates were there doing their own thing, Paul and Leo. They were cool. They were a bit younger than Cody, but they were good kids. Leo was laying on his bed, reading a book, and Paul was on his desk, tinkering away at something very closely. It was a basic routine for the boys. They just tried to keep the peace inside their space. Cody took another exhale into his pillow to try to calm himself. His days normally went very well, right up until the time he had to be back home, curfew and all. Today, however, was a bit different. On his way home, there was some commotion on one of the train cars heading into Brooklyn, and he saw this boy who looked to be in the center of it. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he felt that he knew that boy. Something about his energy drew him in like a moth to a flame.
Well, he's gone forever,
he thought to himself. He rolled over and went to his book bag and pulled out his old atlas. He's had it forever, and it's one of his prized possessions. He turned the pages to his favorite section, Morocco, the beautiful northern state in Africa. He remembers the first time he learned of the Medina, an ancient city in Fez, Morocco. In school, he did an entire report on the Moroccan culture and the people and their practices that had been passed down for generations. He found their culture and customs to be so fascinating and exciting. For some reason, he became obsessed with the thought of someday visiting this place. He then turned the page to the section on Aokigahara, the largest forest in Japan. He felt lightheaded every time he looked at the beautiful pictures of this timeless forest. Something about it gave him chills. It was as if he was missing home. Something very familiar. He always wondered what this connection could mean. He closed his eyes and imagined himself riding a camel through the desert or hiking the forest alone in isolation from nature. It was his dream, and a part of the reason why he hustled so hard. He wanted to make his dream come true. He wanted to save up enough money to buy himself a ticket to Africa, then somehow make his way to Japan, maybe even on foot. It would be an adventure, like Indiana Jones looking for lost treasure and forgotten gems. The joy of the dream drove him every day to wake up at the crack of dawn and dance his butt off, sell newspapers, deal with Scrud, and survive day after day to get there. He wasn't ever going to give that up. Whenever Cody talks about Africa, Leo always has something crazy to say.
You know, they say aliens built those pyramids.
Leo, his bunk buddy, interrupted his thoughts.
But I say that it's a crock of bull crap. I also say that it was the black slaves that built the pyramids for the white man, because the white man is obsessed with pointy titties and bestiality.
Leo said, very matter-of-factly from behind his book, his eyes never leaving the pages. Cody's expression now turned blank. This was a part of his ongoing joke. He used random factoids and stories about how the white man was responsible for every bad thing that happened. It was a tired story, as true as it may be.
Regardless of who built the pyramids, not that I care, because we still don't know. I'm going to see them for myself one day. Maybe. I might as well since I'll be close to Morocco. I'll make sure I send you a postcard when I get there.
Cody closed up his book and stashed it back into his pack. Leo was a smartass, all well-meaning, but still too smart for his own good. Kind of like those conspiracy theorists that come up with crazy ideas because they have too much time and hate in their hearts to think of anything otherwise.
Meh, well, it's your funeral, yo. They say when black people go to the pyramids, they don't come back.
You are such a liar, bro. But man, if not coming back is the option, then I'm going.
Okay, dude. When they cut your wiener off and wear it around their necks as homage to their white devil god, don't say I didn't warn you.
Bro, shut up.
You can't keep denying the truth, Cody. They're gonna cut it off. I promise you.
Whatever. Hey, Paulie, what you working on over there, Einstein?
Paul looked up from his work at Cody, almost like he didn't even know he walked in. He was a skinny kid with really thick glasses. He was nearly blind, but he was a whiz with technology and inventing strange gadgets and things. He didn't speak much on account of his stutter, but he was one of the most clever people Cody had ever met. He just knew that one day he would be famous, just like Einstein.
Oh, it's like a energy reader. Ugh.
Paul stammered through. Cody got up from his bed and walked over to see what Paul was working on. He held it up for him to see, but it looked like a regular wristwatch with just some extra bells and whistles attached to it that made it look like it definitely wasn't about to tell time. There were so many tiny pieces and screws and wires on the desk, he couldn't believe he actually knew what to do with all these things.
He has been sitting there all day with that thing. Dude, have you even used the bathroom today? Or eaten?
Paulie, this thing's pretty dope. But how does it work?
Oh, well, it's an electrical conduit that I programmed to react when it's near large source of energy, in this case, electricity.
Paul said as quickly as he could while gasping for air. Cody just smiled at him. He continued.
It will emit a high tone frequency when it's near a power source, like a high vibration. Look.
Cody hands him the watch, and Paul held it near a power socket by his lamp. The watch starts to buzz, a very low-pitched sound.
This power source is weak, but near something greater, it'll screech.
Wow, this is really cool. Dang, how do you know how to make this, Paulie?
I don't know.
Well, you're super dope, dude. Can't wait to see your stuff on TV one day.
Thanks, Cody. Here, you can have it. I'm done. I'm done with it now.
Wait, what? I can't. You worked so hard on it.
Cody was shocked. Paul never gave up any of his new inventions.
Oh, it's cool. Think you will need it someday.
Paul said, getting up from his desk really quickly.
I have to pee. Ugh, and I'm hungry as hell.
Thanks, bro. I'll take good care of it.
Cody looked over the watch. It looked pretty cool. Maybe it will come in handy one day. He slipped the watch on and examined it on his wrist. It was a perfect fit and comfy too. Leo sucked his teeth.
Jealous.
Cody turned over in his bed. He closed his eyes, ready for sleep to take him. It had been a long day, and the morning couldn't come soon enough. In his dream, Cody was walking through the desert. He could see the setting sun in the distance. The sky was blood orange with blue and yellow hues dancing across the horizon. A flock of birds were flying off in the setting sun. Were they on fire? He couldn't tell. But it was one of the most terrifyingly beautiful things he'd ever seen. He spun around with his hands raised over his head, and his heart fluttered. He could see a city of lights in the distance, so he started walking towards them. Hypnotized by its mirage, his heart started to race. As he tried to start walking, but then he realized he wasn't moving. He tried to pick up his pace, but he was moving in slow motion. He tried to run, but he couldn't will his legs to do so. When he looked down, his legs were sinking into the sand beneath his feet, and suddenly, he dropped into a pit. He couldn't see anything but the sand in front of him. He noticed there was another movement behind him and below him. Snakes. It was a sea of snakes sliding over his feet and wrapping around his legs. Giant snakes, black snakes. He could feel their scales brushing up against his bare skin. The sensation sent shivers to his core. His entire being was in a state of fear. The sun had finally set, and all he can do was look up at the full moon above his head. The light of the moon gave him strength, and he felt a calm start to take over. He felt his form turning to light, his own glow burning bright from deep within him. He felt control starting to return. Then, all of a sudden, he felt one of the snakes begin to wrap itself tightly around his leg and dig its fangs into his flesh. He let out a scream, but no sound came out. One after the other, the snakes attached themselves to him and bit into his flesh. The pain was so real, he tried waking himself but couldn't. He looked back up towards the moon. It was now a blood red. Suddenly, a dark figure appeared in front of him. He couldn't make out who or what it was, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. The fiery shadow had a black diamond lodged in the middle of his forehead. It crept up to him and whispered in his ear. Its voice was full of sinister and vile hatred.
I can make you scream.
Fear whispered in his ear. All Cody could do was breathe and try not to lose his mind to the terror of the dream he was apparently trapped in. Suddenly, a knife materialized in Fear's hand. He took the blade and jammed it into Cody's stomach, right below his belly button. The pain was like nothing he'd ever felt before. He thought he could have died 1,000 times over. Flames scorched the inside of his body to the point he felt the heat burning behind his eyes. The energy in him exploded, and he screamed from the very pit of his soul.
Connie! Cody! Snap out of it! You're okay! Oh crap! What are we gonna do? He's gonna hurt himself!
Leo was next to Cody, trying to wake him up.
Cody! Breathe! Breathe, Cody!
It was no use. He was too far gone. Cody could still feel the blade in his gut, digging and burning inside of him. He started crying hysterically. The images kept flashing back into his head. The dark figure, the blood-red moon, the snakes, they wouldn't stop.
Polly! Go get some water or something. We need to splash him.
Paul agreed and ran out of the room to fetch some water. But then, in walked Spinoza in his night robe.
Hey, what the heck is going on in here, huh?
He walked into the room to stand over Cody and Leo, but of course not willing to help at all.
It's 4 a.m. You fools is having nightmares, huh?
No! It's a night terror! It's more real than just a dream.
Leo tried explaining to him, but Spinoza lacked the ability to give a damn.
Right, I don't give a crap about any of that stuff. So shut up, or you're out on the streets. You hear me, Cody? Huh? Wake up!
In that moment, Paul came rushing back with a glass of water. As he moved past Spinoza, he kicked his leg out and pushed Paul forward, causing him to trip. The glass of water tumbled from his hands and splashed both Leo and Cody completely.
Stupid little boy.
Spinoza was chuckling to himself and started making his way out of the room, when suddenly, Cody's body went still. His eyes rolled to the back of his head, and he started convulsing. His skin started to sizzle as steam was rising from his flesh.
What the hell?
Leo said, moving back on his hands and knees. Cody's skin became completely covered in smoke that turned into black shadow. His body rose from the ground like the rise of the mummy. Leo and Paul huddled in the corner of the room, watching possessed Cody. He stood there, looking at Spinoza in the doorway.
Oh, crap.
was all he could muster. He turned around and tried to waddle out of the room, but stopped dead in his tracks. Shadow Cody was using some sort of telekinesis to hold him in place. He raised his hand and lifted Spinoza off the ground. He spun him around and willed his body to hover directly in front of him. Then he leaned over and whispered in his ear, but it wasn't his voice.
I can smell your fear. Taste it even.
The voice hissed. It materialized another dark blade and jammed it into Spinoza's neck. He gargled a scream as the blade cut clean across his neck. Blood spilled into pools to the ground as he brought the blade out through the other side. He then turned and noticed the window. With the flick of his wrist, the body burst forward and exploded out of the window to the ground outside.
Cody!
Paul said from across the room. He and Leo were terrified. Shadow Cody turned to him slowly and smiled a sinister smile. Shadows were flying around the tiny room, demonic spirits from the other side, looking for more blood to spill as Cody's eyes glowed red.
Cody! What the fuck?
Leo began to say, but in an instant, Shadow Cody cleared the distance between them and with his powers grabbed both Leo and Paul in an invisible stranglehold and lifted them into the air. The boys struggled to breathe.
Are you experiencing fear? I can smell it. I can taste.
He stopped mid-sentence. He was looking into the eyes of his friends, and he could really feel their fear in their heartbeats. The sound of it brought a great sadness to his heart. He could see the green in Paul's eyes through his tears. He felt his heartbeat again. He closed his eyes and tried to fight off the spirit of fear that was trying to control his body. He wanted nothing more than to protect his friends. He dug deep to fight off the rage inside of him. The boys dropped to the ground, grabbing their necks. The shroud of shadows started to disappear from Cody's body. He staggered backwards as he started to regain control of his own body again. His legs felt like clay as he dropped to the ground. He started to steady his breathing and regain control of himself.
Cody! What the hell was that?
What happened?
What happened? What happened? Bro, you turned into Shadow Demon, killed the mess out of Spinoza, straight slit his frickin' throat, tossed him out the window with your Jean Grey powers and shit, and then you nearly killed us. That's what happened. Cody, what are you?
Leo got up and started pacing the room. By the time the rest of the boys in the house were wide awake, standing in the doorway, Paul got up and ran to slam the door shut. Meanwhile, Cody still sat there confused and terrified. He had no recollection of what just happened, but he knew what Leo was saying was true. There was a fresh pool of blood on the ground in front of him, and the window to their room was completely destroyed. He kept his hands on his stomach. The burning was very present. He shook his head, trying to make sense of what was going on. Why him? What was his life about to turn into because of this fear?
Leave. You have to leave. I'm sure someone has called the cops already. You gotta run, Cody.
Cody was listening, but he was still in shock. He just kept shaking his head, tears running down his face. He wanted to wake up from this nightmare. What was he gonna do? He had nowhere to run to.
He's right. It wasn't you. I don't know what that was, but it wasn't you. But the cops won't believe you. They won't believe you were possessed by a shadow demon. And if they do, you're still going to jail. Or worse.
He was right. This wasn't the time to sit and ponder. So Cody got up and collected what things he couldn't leave behind.
Where will you go?
I don't know, but I promise one day I'm gonna make it up to the both of you.
Take care of yourself, Shay Cody Shay.
Cody ran out the front door into the night. He never saw them again. End of chapter 9.